Alex Chimrov here at Movements for Life. For today's restorative segment, we're going to be looking at the posterior hip and how to create some nice mobility throughout those tissues that are very often gunked up. So when we talk about the posterior hip, again, as a general piece of real estate, we're looking at the back part of your hip. So imagine between glute, we remove the glute, we get into some of the deeper tissues, very commonly associated, if anybody's had sciatica, your piriformis, but then we have all the obturators and the gemelli in there. So all the, essentially kind of like my fingers, they run like a fan and they essentially attach the femur, the leg, into the pelvis and sacrum. All right, so very, very deeply rooted and very often the cause of a lot of aches and discomfort for anybody who has restrictions throughout this area. Whether or not this is the source, it's difficult to say because it could be coming from somewhere else, be it the foot or coming from up above into the T-spine, believe it or not. So as we start getting into this, if somebody is symptomatic through here, very, very gunky, we will do some soft tissue work in here and then create some mobility. I'm going to do a pigeon type of variation in the cage. You can also do something like this on the floor by applying these principles on ground. So in the cage, there is essentially a trough in here. So I'm going to position my leg in that pigeon-y type of posture, right? So the leg is in front of me, it's in a position of external rotation. And now from here, I have the ability to really create a lot of stability depending on where I'm going to position my hands. So for argument's sake, I'm going to start with a relatively kind of neutral posture with my hands in front of me. If I start taking my hands to the right, when my right leg is in front of me, I'm going to be winding up that hip even more. Envision like the follow through on a golf swing or a tennis swing. It's going to create more torque into that hip, which is going to create a more intense stretch, if you will. All right, so for my purposes here, hands are in front of me and my hip is shifted. I'm kind of absorbing into the right. I don't want my right hip to move to the left because now I'm bypassing and compensating that right hip. So I have my hip shifted to the right, and now from here, I can apply my multi-dimensionality by using my left heel, my back heel, to rock up and down. So as I'm driving back, I'm keeping a nice arch in my lower back. I don't want to be in that posterior tilt, in that really kyphotic posture. I want to be really tall. All right, so I got my sagittal plane influence here. I can now drive in the frontal plane to just shift or rock my pelvis side to side. And then I can also create a nice twist where my pelvis is like a door. I'm going to open and close it. All right, so basic hip drivers here to start getting into a modified version of a pigeon using the true stretch. I can now get into, if I wanted to get a little funky, and I can start driving my opposite arm into right rotation, and then I can get a little bit more frontal plane influence with my right arm. So now I could do the same thing here. I'm just pre-position myself. I'm wound up more into that right hip, into that internal rotation, and then I can now drive my pelvis from here in all three planes yet again. All right, so a lot of different options as it relates to hand positioning and what you're going to be driving from there. So give that one a whirl. You can apply those same principles, like I said, on ground, and you can start to either drive your pelvis, you could drive your arms, you could use sliders, a lot of different variations to tweak in or tweak out from there. So enjoy that one. That is a very relieving one, especially if you are restricted through there. So enjoy that one. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next week.